Welcome to the Real Chili Podcast.
And the Golden Eagles of Marquette University in Milwaukee are bound for the Final Four for only the third time ever.
5 seconds left. Marquette down by one, trying to avoid the upset. Blue the drive, the left hand. It's good. 1 second to play. Vander Blue has put Marquette in front by one.
And I want to win every day as basketball players, as students, and I want to win every day, most importantly, as people.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Chili Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lavender. I'm here with Pete Mohan, and for the first time this season, right? Pete Worth. How you doing, fellas?
Yeah, for the first time this season. The season just started yesterday. But
first pod this season. There's been a couple without
I think
you.
I was in the preview episode for a little bit.
That's right. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I had to leave early to go to Menards to buy paint. If you recall.
I remember leaving early.
So what'd you go with? Glidden? Bear?
Semi-gloss.
Sherwin-Williams?
I think it was Sherwin-Williams, yeah.
So if you want to stick around for the paint discussion, that's later in the pod. But right now we're going to kick off with the start of the Marquette basketball season. Marquette opened its season just the other night, Friday, November 10th, with a victory over Mount St. Mary's. It was an 80-59 victory at home in Milwaukee. So we're going to cover a few highlights of that, and then we're going to quickly get into a preview of the Marquette-Purdue game. Purdue actually travels to the BMO Harris Bradley Center the last year at the BMO Harris Bradley Center on Tuesday night, November 14th, for one of Marquette's bigger games of the season, and certainly one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in the non-conference. So, fellas, let's quickly kind of go over the Marquette's victory over Mount St. Mary's. There were a lot of freshmen that got minutes. We saw Greg Elliott. We saw Jamal Cain. We got to see a lot of Theo John. So this was a game where Marquette shot only 28% from the three-point line, which was about as bad as it got last year. They only shot that poorly in 3 games in all of last year. But we got a lot of production down low from folks like Matt Helt and Sam Hauser and Theo John. What were some of your impressions of the game against Mount St. Mary's?
First and foremost, I think that the score was not necessarily indicative of how badly we beat them. I mean, we were up 74-37, doubling them up halfway through the second half, and Wojo kind of called off the dogs, brought in the freshman line change. I think at one point he pulled them off and put the starters back in so that he could yell at those guys to motivate them on the bench, and then sent them back in for the last 5 minutes. You know, we thoroughly dominated them and put to bed any lingering anxieties that the fan base may have had following the close exhibition matchup with Lindenwood.
I wasn't really able to catch any of the game, but I did see a lot of the highlights, which always, tell you the best story of the game.
The full picture, yeah. The full picture, yeah.
But just like thinking about it, it was good for us to have an easy win right off the bat, especially like Pete said, coming off of the Lindenwood scare, and to set the tone before probably our biggest game of the year. I mean, obviously the biggest game of the year, but could be the most important game of the year when all is said and done, just because how good Purdue could be this year. Mm-hmm. And a potential win will be huge for the rest of the year. So it was good to see them get off to a good start. Andrew Rousey seemed like he really dominated this game in all facets of the game.
He was a leader out there.
Yeah, yeah. That's what we need from him this year.
And we brought Howard off the bench, too, because, coming off a lingering ankle injury, I guess, it might have been a little tender. He still ended up playing 25 minutes, but the first crew out there was Rousey at the point. And I think with the first unit, Helt had a big game. He had an especially big first half. Mm-hmm. And I thought Cheatham played well despite a few times getting caught out of control and turning the ball over that way. Mm-hmm. But other than that, he was 6 of 8 shooting, and the team assisted well. They had 16 assists on 29 shots made, so I thought the ball movement was there, and it was nice to see a team's offense continue to be predicated on ball movement rather than dribbling.
I got a question for you, both you guys,
yeah.
That I just kind of thought of. So Howard came off the bench.
Yep.
Do you guys think it's at all possible that this wasn't entirely injury related, or that we are going to see more times when they aren't paired together. More times when they're not paired together than we thought going into this year, just because of how well they played as individuals last year.
I think that's an interesting point, because when Markus Howard came in, it was like 4 or 5 minutes in, right? And he got off a 3 pretty quickly. And the play-by-play announcer on the TV broadcast immediately made the point, oh, his ankle looks fine. He got great elevation on that 3. So I think that's a really interesting point, that whether it's injury related or not, we don't really know, but it sure as hell didn't look that way. So I don't know exactly what that means. Was Markus, was there something in practice? Was he not showing enough effort? But if you look at the starting lineup, right, it's guys like Sacar, Rousey, Hauser, Helton, Cheatham. But I don't know why. I don't know why that Howard thing.
I think that it kind of syncs up with Wojo's hinting that we're going to see more Howard playing the 2 guard than the lead guard. And I think something that hammered that home from yesterday was not only was Howard not running much of the point. I mean, he did still run some point when Rousey was on the bench, but we saw a lot of Greg Elliott handling the ball. Mm-hmm. And we also saw Hanif bringing the ball up the court a few times and initiating the offense as well. Not that Hanif is going to be our point guard, but it shows to me that Wojo is looking for other people to be primary ball handlers, so that even when Howard's out there without Rousey, he can still play off the ball and get his shots off.
Yeah, Rousey was really bringing the ball. We mentioned he looked like a leader. He was really bringing the ball up the majority of the time. And you're right, Howard was much more floating in that 2-guard position. Before we move on to the Purdue game, I do, so Mount St. Mary's is one of the worst teams we're going to play all year. Definitely one of the worst 3. So hard to read into. I mean, we dominated them like we should have. But we can read into a little bit of what we saw from Jamal Cain, what we saw from Theo John, Greg Elliott, and Sacar. I for one was surprised to see Sacar start. So maybe we can just quickly run down those few fellows and just give reactions of what we saw from them. Yeah. If we start with Sacar, I was impressed with Sacar.
He played the most minutes.
He started.
He played 33 minutes. I mean, his legs were fresh from having a year off.
Right. And he led the team in minutes, right, is what you're saying.
Right.
And
exactly.
And so Sacar's a guy, we were just talking about this before we started recording. Sacar's a guy that is redshirted, and he is listed at 6'5", 210. But he's a guy who can play that 3 spot, can play that 2 spot, depending on what the matchup is, and really bring defense. We don't necessarily need him to bring offense. And I think he showed some of that. He's quick. Right. He's got some lateral quickness, and he can be a good defender.
He's a guy that can impact the game without having to score a lot. And he had 4 shot attempts in 33 minutes. He also had 4 free throw attempts, which is good. If you're a guy that maybe can't rely on your jump shot as much, the fact that we are taking it to the rim in that situation shows that our coaching is doing its job. And they actually mentioned on the broadcast last night how one of our strengths last year was being an elite free throw shooting team. The problem being that we didn't get to the line enough. Mm-hmm. So I think that we saw an increased emphasis on getting into the big men of the other team and drawing fouls so that we can take more free throws and take advantage of that. Sacar featuring that in his game, as many free throw attempts as field goal attempts, I think that that's a good sign for his ability to impact the offense in a controlled fashion.
So Sacar's line ended with 7 points. I think he had
5 assists.
5.
Impressive.
Yeah,
that's great.
7 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds, a steal. So that is a line that I will take from Sacar every single game.
All season.
All season. I'll take that.
What he could be reminds me of what Trent Lockett provided for that Elite 8 team.
Maybe, but more athletic, maybe.
Yeah, more athletic, possibly more offensively gifted. We'll have to see. But like you said, Mike, that's not his role on this team. Anything that he can provide offensively is gravy. But that's what we need from him is his rebounding, his toughness, his leadership. I mean, a lot of people forget that he's pretty highly ranked recruit. Minnesota Player of the Year, I believe.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So. And everything leading up kind of what we were reading in the postseason from the new beat writer at the Journal Sentinel, Ben Steele, for you other guys, was that Anim was going to be definitely going to receive more playing time this year, and it's going to be interesting to see if he can keep it up the rest of the year.
So the first of the three freshmen, Ike Ake, has obviously been redshirted, and apparently that's the correct pronunciation. But of the three freshmen who are going to play this year, Theo John was the first one off the bench. His stat line, he ended up with 4 points. He had, let's see, what did he have? He had 6 rebounds, 1 assist, 5 personal fouls. So he fouled out. I actually didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
At least according to ESPN. So
in 13 minutes.
It
was a pretty impressive fouling performance. But I thought overall Theo John played well, other than the fact that he put us in a precarious position where we had to probably play help more minutes than we wanted to before the big matchup coming up.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that I liked about Theo John, and we knew that his body was ready to go, that he's ready to play minutes against legit competition, but his motor really stood out to me. I mean, he was like all over the place, just a pinball. When you have that type of energy and you're as big as him, you have to learn how to control it, because the refs are going to see that flailing and call fouls. They just see a big guy moving frantically, and their instinct is to blow the whistle. So
and he was we were playing against Mount St. Mary's, one of the smaller teams in the country, right? So like he can stand to be more physical against a team like Purdue and probably get away with more and not pick up as many fouls.
Absolutely.
But
definitely.
But he was playing above the rim. There were a couple alley-oops. He got a couple of tough rebounds kind of in the middle of 3 or 4 Mount St. Mary's players. So that's what we need from him, right? We need playing above the rim, hustle down the court, grab rebounds. He doesn't have to be kind of like Sacar, doesn't have to be an offensive phenom, but a physical presence.
Yeah.
And he ended up with 6 rebounds, and we've highlighted in a couple previous pods that we're going to need help on the boards when we get into the meat of this schedule, and he's going to be a big piece of it.
And he didn't have a block, but I can attest that he looked pretty good on help side defense, and at least, intimidating a few shooters and threatening some shots. So 0 in the blocks column, but he definitely showed me that he's capable of being that help side defender.
Yeah, and our biggest weakness last year, everybody knows it, is our defense. And without some proven additions to boost that defense, we don't really know how good the defense will be. But Theo John's going to be a huge piece of solving that issue. And if we want to make it back to the tournament and advance at least a game or two, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it unless the defense is there. And John, with his size, he's going to be a huge factor.
I forgot, it's John the Baptist. We forgot that was the name selected. We got to roll with that. So the other 2 fellows, the freshmen that got minutes, Greg Elliott and Jamal Cain, again both Detroit products. Greg Elliott, he stood out a little bit more than Jamal Cain, and I think one of you just mentioned to me that Wojo has said, or at least kind of led people to believe, that Elliott is further along. I think that was bore out last night. Elliott had a steal pretty early on in a breakaway, a 2-on-1, and he had a beautiful touch finish at the rim where he just kind of laid it in. It was the kind of thing that you can't teach. Elliott and Cain, both very slim, have a lot of working out and growing up to do. But I liked what I saw from Elliott in that he's got instincts and he looks like he knows what to do out there.
Well, we kind of hinted that maybe his game would be similar to Juwan's game. Did you think you saw that out there, Mike or Pete?
I don't know if I saw it defensively yet. I mean, offensively, I could see it.
I mean, he had 2 steals.
There you go.
That's kind of Juwan's MO.
Yeah.
I mean, I just like his length out there, and in addition to that, sometimes it's hard for guys with arms that long to be good ball handlers. I don't know, but he looked like he was a steady ball handler, and when he had the ball in his hands, even in facilitating movement around the perimeter, he looked confident with the ball and not hesitant. Even in some ways, like that Cheatham showed us he was hesitant last year. When Elliott got the ball, he knew right away whether he was swinging it or driving or shooting or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I like that he seems already confident in our offense.
What I want to see from Greg, said the Juwan comparison, and I think Juwan's defense might have been a little overrated, throughout his career. He was long and athletic, and we saw a lot of breakaway steals and flashy dunks. But I think his on-the-ball pressure and just overall team defense wasn't all that, remarkable. And so I think if Greg uses those skills that he's got, his length and athleticism, to become, a better team defender, that's just another small step, another small addition that we can make to round out this basketball team and not have them be so one-sided and leaning on the offense.
To me, for Elliott and Cain, I think maybe more so for Elliott at this point, but I think the limiting factor for them is going to be, are they going to be detrimental to the team on defense? I think they could piece it together early in their career on offense, but because they're so slim, because they're so young, are they going to be able to stand up against Purdue, against Wisconsin, against Vermont, and against the Big East schedule? That is going to be the limiting factor for their minutes. It's not, the fact that they can't get to the hole. It's going to be, are they going to expose us on defense? So Jamal Cain, the third freshman, he played 12 minutes. He had 3 points, 1 rebound, 1 for 2 from the free throw line, 1 for 3 from the field. He was definitely the freshman that got in the latest. I think Wojo has said that he probably has the most to develop. The kid has clearly got athleticism out the wazoo, and he can clearly be a breakaway player. He's long, he's lanky. Again, I think this defensive question is one, but how's he going to grow in, and where's he going to find that spot on the roster seems like a question for me. But from a pure talent standpoint, he's got it.
All right, I'm going to hit you with a cross-sport analogy here. For a guy like Cain to develop, it's going to be harder than, for example, Theo John. The list of his responsibilities on this team is very short. When you're one of these 6'7" athletic wings, so Jamal Cain has all of the physical tools. We all agree with that. And he's going to have 4 years to develop here at Marquette. But when you're one of those tweener positions, it takes longer because you have to develop both your perimeter skills and your interior skills. It's similar to in the NFL when a tight end gets drafted, and tight end is notoriously one of the slowest developing positions. Guys usually aren't really great players in their first year as a tight end. It usually takes to their third or fourth year because they have to learn offensive line scheme and receiving scheme and put it all together. And it's going to be a similar learning curve for Jamal Cain because he has those responsibilities on both sides that he's going to have to develop. And he has probably the highest upside due to his physical abilities of any of these freshmen. But we're going to have to be patient because there's just so much that he's going to have to learn and develop in his game. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if by his senior year he's the best out of the bunch.
So we got to get moving on to talk about the Purdue game, but Mohan, you did make a note earlier that you wanted to touch on Hauser. Look at Hauser's stat line. Stat line from last night against Mount St. Mary's: 4 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 1 turnover, 1 personal foul. That's an interesting stat line from Sam Hauser. I didn't walk away from that game thinking he only had 4 points, but 6 rebounds, 3 assists. So what do you think of that, Mohan? What's your read on that?
I thought it was mostly a game planning thing. Hauser, he just never seemed like he was supposed to be involved on offense in this game. I don't know if that's they're saving him for Purdue as a secret weapon. Not that he's secret, but maybe they didn't want to see, the best ways that we have to implement Sam into our offense right in this game. And they wanted to kind of get other guys involved in the flow of things. And the one thing that I think that they told Sam to work on, which I thought he was great at yesterday, was rebounding. He looks like he's added, an inch or two to his vertical. He seemed like he was the best rebounder out there, getting to the balls at the highest point, which was extremely encouraging to me. He had 2 offensive boards and 6 rebounds overall in 23 minutes, which is pretty solid. So I think that's kind of going to be the coach's emphasis for Sam all season, is crashing the boards. And it's a critical element to our success, is how well we're able to rebound from that power forward position to help out Helt and John or whoever else is playing center. So good sign for me. I wouldn't read too much into his, minimal impact on the scoring sheet, but I think overall, we can still expect great things from Sam.
Yeah, we won the game by 21. It's like there's going to be nights where we have so many different guys that can put the ball in the basket on this team that there's going to be nights where, Sam or whether it be Rousey, whether it be Howard, don't get into double figures and we'll still be A-okay. It's just one of those nights. I don't read too much into that. Obviously, I didn't see too much of the game, but as long as he's contributing, on the boards, that's what we need from him night to night. That's for sure. We'll always need that in every game from Sam.
So we wish we could run through every other player on the roster. Matt Helt was another player who had a good showing last night, and Matt Helt is really going to be tested in this Purdue game that we want to cover right now. So let's transition to a little bit of a Purdue preview. So Marquette, again, will play Purdue on Tuesday, November 14th in Milwaukee. It is an 8:30 p.m. Eastern tip, 7:30 Central tip. At the BMO Harris Bradley Center. Purdue is, according to Ken Palm, 17th ranked team in the country. Ken Palm actually says that this will be a loss for Marquette, but only by 1 point. In one of our schedule preview pods, which we picked this game as a loss for Marquette, and I think you've seen other outlets report this too, Purdue lost Caleb Swanigan, one of their all-world players from last year who was drafted in the first round of the NBA draft, but they returned virtually everyone else. So the senior experience, the time in the Purdue system is going to be a challenge for this Marquette team. So Pete Mohan, Pete Worth, what are some of your top-line things that you're looking for in this game? How is Purdue going to attack Marquette? What can Marquette do to potentially walk away from the Bradley Harris Center with a win? Or from the BMO Harris Bradley Center with a win?
There's an interesting issue that Marquette is going to have to face, and probably the only time we'll face this all year, is the fact that we're facing a team that features two 7'2 plus guys. Literal giants in the center for Purdue.
And, not to be confused with Little Giants.
Correct.
Great movie.
Isaac Haas and Matt Harms. Haas is a senior, so he's grown under the tutelage of Caleb Swanigan and A.J. Hammonds in the past. Harms, on the other hand, is a redshirt freshman. So, he was spending the last year running scout team for Purdue and still banging with those guys last year. So even though he's a freshman, he still has experience playing against some really skilled big men in his own practices. So these are two guys that we're going to have to deal with. They each played pretty well in their win last night against SIU Edwardsville. Even Harms, the freshman, he had 18 minutes. I think that they're obviously going to be something to deal with on the offensive end. The one thing, though, that was interesting from last night is apparently they struggled giving up offensive rebounds. They gave up 17 offensive rebounds to SIU Edwardsville in the first half alone. It's something that we'll have to exploit. Certainly the mobility of someone that's 7'2" is somewhat limited, and maybe we're able to take advantage of that with our quickness and getting to the offensive glass.
Neighbor, with the height of those two of Purdue, particularly at the 4 and 5 spots, how is Matt Helt what is Wojo gonna do to put Matt Helt in a good position? Do you think we see a lot of Helt and Theo John out there at the same time?
Very well could be. I mean, we're definitely going to need it. I don't know how often they're going to play both of those two 7-footers at the same time, so it'll be will be matchup dependent. Helt's going to be big minutes just because we have to rely on him, and he's got to play a good game. He doesn't necessarily have to put 11 points in the box score like he did against Mount St. Mary's. He probably won't because of the superior competition. We're going to have to shoot the ball well, but the main thing, I think, is keeping them off the offensive glass with their size. I mean, Vincent Edwards is 6'8", a senior, probably going to be all Big Ten this year. That's a guy, I think, who could really, really dominate us because probably Sam Hauser will be on him. Sam is improving defensively, but he's still not a defensive whiz out there, and when he's going up against a guy like Edwards, I think that matchup could really be exploited for Purdue. I think it's going to be a close game, but I do think that their size is going to be, this isn't, brain surgery or whatever, I do think their size is going to be the reason why they kind of pull off a victory.
Their best guard is senior Dakota Mathias. He was hailed by Matt Painter as probably low-key their offensive MVP last season, and one of the most efficient offensive players in the country. Showed it again last night, shooting 2 for 2 on 3-pointers and 6 for 6 on free throws, in addition to making 50% of his 2-pointers, on the way to leading the team with 18 points. The fact that he's a 6'4", 200-pound guard is another size issue that we're going to have to deal with on the perimeter, because that means that basically we're not going to be able to have Rousey or Howard guard their best guard. We're going to need Cheatham or Anim to guard Matthias, I think. So we'll have to figure out, I guess, we'll put Howard on PJ Thompson, who's a little bit more diminutive. But the fact that they have a guy like Matthias who can light it up from the perimeter and still has that size could create some matchups.
So, Pete Worth, I want to throw it to you. Who do you think comes out on top of this game, and what do you think it's close? Do you think it's a big win? Tell us what you think the score will be.
Yeah, I kind of forgot to give my spoiler alert in my last comment, which I kind of mentioned that already. But I think it's going to be a close win for Purdue. I think they're just too experienced. I think that's going to be a major factor as well. They've kind of been through it all. They're expected to either be a top 1 or 2 team with Michigan State in the Big Ten this year. I think they're just a really well-rounded team. We talk about the 2 big guys, but they're a lot more than that. Mm-hmm. And like I mentioned, I think Vincent Edwards is going to be too tough for us. I think we will play well. I think if Rousey continues to show the confidence that he's displaying out there, I mean, he could be a major factor in the Big East this year. And one thing to look for, I read a lot about this in the preseason, is Markus Howard diversifying his skill set offensively, and he's going to need that kind of floater in the lane. He showed it off a little bit against Mount St. Mary's. He's going to have to create different ways to score for us to compete with these better schools. So just a couple things to look for on Marquette to combat the size of Purdue, but I think Purdue squeaks it out.
So a close victory for Purdue from Pete Worth. Mohan, what you got?
Well, this is obviously, we've beaten it to death, but this is going to be one of our toughest matchups all season. And I don't think that's lost on Wojo and the coaching staff. I'm going to break the trend. I think that Marquette comes out with a win here.
Jeez.
We're doing it for the conference. I mean, if we want to support our league and all of the other teams that we face in the Big East RPI, we're coming out of here with a W. But no, in all seriousness, we have the firepower on offense to put up enough points to hang with Purdue. It's the last season at BMO Harris. It's going to be magic. We gotta win one more for the BC. See, if we had Wisconsin at home this year, maybe that's where this team would be saving its gusto. I think that they recognize that this is probably, I'm guessing just looking at the schedule, this is the biggest home non-conference game of the season. The BC is going to be raucous. I think we come out of here with a win. 84-79 was my prediction last night, so I'll stay
84-79, there you go. So again, this matchup against Purdue is one of the Gavitt tip-off games, which is an annual series between the Big Ten and the Big East. I'm close to where you are, Mohan, but here's what I think it's going to come down to. I think if Marquette's going to win this game, we're going to need to show up at the three-point line. Against Mount St. Mary's, Marquette shot 28.6%. That is pretty terrible by Marquette standard. We only shot that percentage 3 times all of last year. That was against Pittsburgh last year, which was a loss, against Georgetown, where we got decimated here in Washington, D.C., and against Michigan, where we also got decimated last year. So I'm not confident Marquette can – I don't know. I'm skeptical whether we can reverse that in one
Sounds like you're checking into Decimation Station over here. I don't know.
I don't think we'll get decimated. I think it's going to be about an 8 or 9 point loss. I just – between their experience, between their kind of Purdue's versatility and our maybe cold three-point shooting, I think it's going to be a tough night. But I think we'll put up a good fight and hopefully show some effort. So with that, we've got a close loss, a 9 to 8 point loss from me, and then Mohan, you've got about a 5 point win from Marquette. So we'll see if all that comes true.
Make no mistake, if this was a 7-game series, we would not be winning it.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
We come out of here with a dub. We're not the better team.
So that is going to do it for us here on the Real Chili podcast. We've got one game under our belt this season, and this Purdue game is certainly going to be exciting, and we're going to learn a lot about what Marquette could do this season once we see them on the court against a legitimately good team, and a team that'll could be a 5-seed or above in the NCAA tournament. So it's going to be a fun watch. With that, we're signing off. So thanks again for listening to the Real Chili podcast. Signing off for Pete Mohan and Pete Worth, I'm your host, Mike Lavender. We'll talk to you soon here on the Real Chili podcast.
Don't.
Per will.
Per debatum.
Did I use the term brain science earlier? I think I was mixing my metaphors.